there are two types of Sanji stands. There's obviously the my type, and I don't want to say the toxic type. I would say the type that's more aligned with,
Already said it, though.
I know, with the Mr.
Start there.
Prince, with the Mr. Prince Sanji,
Right.
the humor pre-time skip where it was kind of more balanced, and there weren't more external women that he could flirt with. It was mainly Nami and Robin, and then there's those who really learn to appreciate Sanji even more with the subtle character moments, like from Baratier, especially Whole Cake Island would probably be a wet dream for the other side of the Sanji stands. But fortunately with me, we have basically a representation of the two. This is something me and Ohara have talked about in the past, and I'm glad we're now here to have you discuss this. So one, what part of Sanji do you enjoy the most and why? I think we should probably frame that picture before we discuss.
Right. It's a good point. So first of all, I'm gonna come out of the closet and say that I'm a very big, like, my favorite character in the story is Zoro. But I'm not a person, like, I'm not the, like, oh, like, I hate when people ask me what's your favorite X, because, like, I hate ranking things. It's like, there's a ton of, like, but if you forced me, I would say, like, whenever Zoro fights, like, that gives me joy.
Right.
That being said, I'm a very big, like, I have a lot of love in my heart for Sanji. Like, I really love his character for completely different reasons, which we're gonna get into in a second. But, like, for me, it's a bit what you say. I'm probably falling a bit more into that second type. Like, I appreciate the gentleman side and the, like, the James Bond kind of vibe.
Yep.
You know, I think that's how you put it.
Yep, exactly how you put it.
I do enjoy that side, but that's not why I love his character. I'm probably falling more into that second category that you said, because for me, post-time skip Sanji was fantastic. Like, we talked about this quickly when we were talking in private the other day. But for example, when, like, that, I was shocked to find out that not everybody was completely in love with the Black Maria chapters, because for me that was, like, fantastic character development for like, it was payoff for the entire Whole Cake Island arc. It was like Whole Cake Island was about Sanji learning to let go of, like, the negative side of his, like, gentleman side, where it's like, I have to do everything on my own. I don't get to, like, nobody, like, I can't accept help from others. Because, like, Sanji was basically the only Straw Hat who never was, like, saved by Luffy, right? He was just like, you want to be my cook? And was like, yeah, you saved my ship, thanks, I'll come along, you seem like a cool guy, and, like, kind of, like, got pushed out by Zeph.
Interesting.
So he always had that, like, all the Straw Hats have in some way or form been, like, pulled out of darkness by Luffy before, some dark place. And Sanji didn't have that, right? So that was what Whole Cake Island was all about. It was, like, that delayed version, basically. Similar how, like, Arlong Park was, like, a bit delayed for Nami, kind of.
Yes.
You know? Though. So, or, like, Enies Lobby for Robin, you could also say that. But, like, at some point, like, every Straw Hat gets saved by Luffy properly.
Right.
And so that was what Whole Cake Island was about for me. It was like, it was never about Sanji learning, like, unlocking Conqueror's Haki and, like, suddenly doing crazy, like, eating Big Mom's devil fruit and then becoming a Yonko. Like, that was never what it was going to be about, right? It was always about, like, Sanji's character is about his character. It's like, Zoro wants to become the strongest, so he has to become stronger to reach his goal. He has to grow as a person. He has to unlock Conqueror's Haki and, like, do stuff with his sword that other people can't do, right? That's what his character is about. And then with Sanji, like, his dream is to find the all blue, but, like, that's not something you can, like, grow towards. That's just something geographical, which is going to happen when they're probably going to reach the one, like, Luff Tail or whatever, or, like, the red line comes down or whatever, all the theories out there. But, like, what his character is about is, Sanji has always for me been about preserving his ideals. It's like, I'm a gentleman, I don't hit women, right? That's the thing. And it's like at the beginning of the story, it's really easy. I don't kick women. But then as the story goes on and on, it's like, well, aren't there some women that might be worthy of you kicking? Like, what if you know, your friends or your crew is in danger, or someone you love is about to be killed? Like, and it's like testing out these chivalrous values that he has, like, integrate into his life. It's like exploring both, can I actually keep them alive, and two, do they make sense in the long run in every situation?
Right.
And for me, Whole Cake Island was about learning that. It's like, you don't have to be the white knight in shining armor that saves the princess every time. Like, it's okay to, like, rely on your crew to save you and believe in them. And then when he calls for Robin to save him, when it's usually the other way around, it's like he wants to be the one to save Robin, but he's like, no, like, I've learned in Whole Cake Island that I can rely on my friends, and in this moment, like I have the choice. Do I like I can die, I can break my ideals to and like actually fight Black Maria, but I have the option to rely on like my strong, like, you know, female crewmate. So I'm gonna do that. This is the easiest way. Like Robin is strong, so I might as well call her, so I don't have to die, I don't have to break my ideals. So for me, that was like a fantastic. I was super happy when that happened. I found out very quickly that was not a shared reaction by the community.
You know what, Ohara? You know what? I'm gonna give you your cookies. I'm gonna give you a round of applause because
Thank you.
I have rebuffed every human being that has tried to make that Black Maria look good to me. I have completely rebuffed it. The benefit of what you mentioned is the way you framed it. I understood better because it's true. Sanji normally likes to try and take care of things himself. Normally when he's doing something in secrecy, in an espionage format. If you saw how he saved Viola, he's like, I'm gonna do this on my own, I got you. And when they captured him, he was willing to take the beating, but once men were there, he's like, oh, well, I can fight these guys. I don't have to hit Viola, you know. So this is the first time Sanji's been put in a situation since Enies Lobby where it's either he stays and gets beaten or he asks for help. Now, the only difference between Khalifa and this is that he didn't have the option of asking anyone for help because he didn't see anyone around him. So in this case, they were saying, call Nico Robin. Now, you're right. The old Sanji would have been like, I'm not letting you put your hands on a woman. I'm willing to sacrifice my life for my ideals.
Exactly.
And in this case, and in this case, they actually, okay, I see what you're saying. Now, tying in that into Whole Cake, it's funny you say that because my argument is that what we saw from last chapter was the Whole Cake payoff. And I'll say it like this. Sanji normally has, like you mentioned before, Sanji likes to do things himself. Sanji kind of thinks, okay, well, if there is, this situation with Big Mom, Luffy can't get me out of this. Nobody can get me out of this. I'm stuck here. They got Zeph. I can't do anything. I would need a miracle. And that's the key word. I need a miracle to get out of this. And he didn't believe in the miracles that Luffy has done before in that moment in time. So he went off the Whole Cake. He was stranded. He didn't have a choice. We understand why he did what he did. Now we move on to Onigashima. After Luffy beat Katakuri, after you started believing in Luffy, right? That was the development. Then now we're in Whole Cake, in Wano. Kaido announced Luffy died. He's done. He's out. Everybody's crying. Everyone's like, oh my God, no way. It can't just be Luffy. The one person that stands up in the midst of that turmoil was Sanji, and the fact that he even mentioned, how many miracles have we seen? What happened in Whole Cake was a miracle. Yeah. At the end of the day, no matter how you slice it, it was a miracle. So to me, when Sanji said that to Chopper and he gave him that speech, it was very reminiscent of Zoro in the Davy Back fight with Chopper, which I did like, very reminiscent. That was the moment where I saw it. Sanji has learned now that don't bet against Luffy no matter what. And I guess there's two different takeaways because your presentation of of him learning how to work around his ideals with the Black Maria moment, that's its own separate moment. And then this one seems like another Whole Cake moment. So maybe the two parts are both more development for Sanji, which means Sanji's got a lot of development up to this point.
Oh, he does. I mean, I always feel like, in general, I feel like I complain often about characters like Robin or Chopper, who like now slowly again are like, I think in Whole Cake Island was great for Chopper also, absolutely, like Brook also. Yes. But like especially the early times after the time skip, like Fishman Island and Punk Hazard and Dressrosa, those were very Luffy centered. But I feel like Sanji was one of the few characters who actually did get like consistent development, and like we showed, like I complained a lot about, especially like, as I said earlier, like these later members like Chopper, Robin, Frankie, Brook, like these got like very little character development, especially early on in the after the time skip, which I kind of disliked. For Sanji, I felt like it was like same for Zoro, it was a very consistent arc, in my opinion. And what I feel like what I use to tie together the two ideas we just threw out there is, I think the most important thing, the central thing that Sanji realized, I mean, he was already willing to give his life for Luffy, right? And that's what we saw in like on Thriller Bark with Zoro. He was willing to die for Luffy, right? What he was not willing to do is, step down or swallow his pride to stay alive for Luffy, which is what Luffy demanded of him. Like he like that scene where Luffy says, "I can't become Pirate King without you."
yeah.
I think that's stuck, and it's like, okay, well, it's not enough to just be the cool guy and be like, it's kind of like, I mean, kind of like saying it's easy to sacrifice yourself, it's hard to fight to stay alive for someone, kind of.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and that's like, I feel like that's maybe what's like binding these two ideas together for Sanji also, that he learned in Whole Cake Island.
So I'll give you this. I do look at that moment in a different light. I do. However, and this is where we get into the next portion of this topic, where there's a discourse between the usage of Sanji post time skip. To me,
right,
the Black Maria abuse, I think Oda went too far. He did not need to overextend and embarrass Sanji to that level to get that point across, in my personal opinion.
Where was he embarrassed though? Like I'm genuinely asking this because I genuinely don't see it.
So it's like the way he got caught. Like, I understand there's a woman that's crying for help. We understand. He breaks free, and knowing how capable Sanji is, and I understand this will be nitpicking. So just follow me here.
Right.
The fact that he was captured again, the fact that we know he can turn invisible, the fact that he knows there was no woman in danger, why couldn't Sanji escape in that moment? The reason he didn't want to escape is for the sake of that moment we got with Robin. My problem is afterwards we got 2 straight chapters of Black Maria beating the dog shit out of Sanji, to the point where everyone's like, oh, this guy is disgusting, he's a disgrace. And it's like, you have to understand that in that time, Oda had been putting Sanji in these similar type of moments for a long time in post time skip, where you have Fishman Island, you have a little bit of Dressrosa here and there. Like, it's like when everyone is looking for that, you know, the James Bond Sanji that you mentioned, people like me, you guys have more patience for it because you're looking for, you know, the depth within these actions. For us, it's like, if you hold Sanji to such a high regard, it seems like Oda is abusing Sanji. And the fact that I feel validated because the voice actor himself agrees with us that he's like, when is Sanji gonna be cool again? Because it's like, the perception is Oda just likes using Sanji for situations where he'll normally be made to look like a fool. And that Black Maria moment was like one of those moments where Oda made Sanji look like a fool, to the point where people within the story were saying, this guy looks like an idiot. Now, he got redeemed. Really? Yes, but that's how it looks. That's the perception.
But, like, okay, you sound like you love James Bond, right? So you've probably seen the movie.
I've seen, you know, I've rewatched it like 20 times. Like,
but how much more James Bondy does it get than James Bond being, like, seduced by a hot woman, gets beaten to a pulp, and then comes back stronger?
First of all, he sleeps with a woman. All right, I don't want to hear that. All right, Sanji don't sleep with the woman, so we can move that out of there. Okay,
I think we can agree, if it were in the show, then he would definitely do so.
Viola's the only exception, and then Pudding. So, okay, to be fair, there's some redemption.
He's getting there. Yeah. I mean, the dude's like 20, right? He's like,
it's crazy when you think about that. Yeah, Sanji is like 21. That's kind of wild.
He's young. He's like, he's not early, but he's also not super late. So like, he can take a step.
Exactly. I mean, so what is your thoughts on that? Because I'm assuming you don't believe Sanji's being made. Oda's not making a fool of Sanji.
I mean, like, obviously Oda has like a lot of running, as he does with every character. It's like, you can also say, like, it's like, as a Zoro fan, you can also say it stops being funny when Zoro gets lost the excess time. But like, for me, it always it makes it funnier every time it happens kind of. And like, to be fair, one thing I kind of dislike, I feel like for me, the nosebleed thing, and I feel like that's more of a Japanese thing.
Yeah, that was bad.
I feel like that's something that doesn't resonate with too many people. And for me, like, especially in Fishman Island, it was kind of like, it was, in retrospect, I think like I can appreciate it more that Oda was like purposefully overdoing. He was like, not only is this like anime nose bleeding, this is like nose bleeding and you might die from it, which I in retrospect can kind of appreciate now. Though in the moment this was a bit annoying, especially in the anime. So like, that's a part that like I don't hate, but like I'm not super in love with, but it's like something that's been consistent with this character, and like, you can love it or hate it about this character, but it's never been like out of place. It's not like suddenly he does it. It's like, no, that's part of Sanji, right?
Yeah.
And then, as I said, for me, it's like, we know that Sanji has this weak spot for women. It's like, oh, I gotta step. I'm gonna caught myself saying like here a lot again.
Yeah.
Got blasted for that last time. So for me, it's he gets seduced, which is in line with his character. He doesn't want to leave, which is in line with his character. He's surrounded by like cute girls,
Right.
who like kind of like are a bit flirty with him, even if it's in a very abusive way.
Yes.
Not that Sanji dislikes that generally. And he gets captured again, and then he gets beaten, which is again for me very James Bond like. It's like at the beginning, the hero gets caught, he gets beaten to a pulp, but he comes back stronger from it. And it's like the latest chapters where he like flinging around Queen like that. I'm like, he basically like he looked a bit he looked a bit bloody when he got beaten up by Black Maria. He basically doesn't like, he's starting fresh kind of.
Yeah, it's like,
for me.
Barely has any
Sanji
damage.
looks, he's like nothing happened. He's like, and I feel like that makes it so cool. It's like, oh, the likes again. now I'm super conscious about it.
Yeah, you're good, man. You're good.
Chill.
You're good.
Gotta chill. So basically, now we have him just being, hey, you like Robin got this. Basically, this has nothing on me. I'm just enjoying my time here, kind of in like a fucked up way.
Yes.
and now he's doing his thing. He saved Zoro from at least crashing into the floor. I don't want to get people jumping on me. We have this hilarious moment where he's using Zoro as a sword, which is like absolutely fantastic in so many ways,
yes,
which is great. And like again, like it's like the best moments are like these two kind of like getting along, which is
I agree with
absolutely
that.
great.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
And now he's kicking ass, right? And I don't know. For me, this is like just has been a fantastic, like as I said, like for me, this is character development from Whole Cake Island. I didn't look at it that way as you said it earlier from the last chapter, but I 100% agree. So we have like several steps of character development there. We have Sanji being able to keep his ideals, but rely on his crew and like be willing to like swallow his pride for his captain.
Okay.
And everyone respects him for it. Literally, like Robin, you can see like how
Robin really appreciated that moment.
She glowed from that.
She really was happy.
And you have to look at it like that's one point. You also have to look like you have to look at it from her character point as well, because like her entire thing has that nobody ever was able to rely on her and like depend on her. It was always like, you're unnecessary, you're unwanted,
you're
like
a nuisance. Yeah. And I think
for the first time, someone like really called like Sanji out of all people calling for her to save him. Like you could see her glowing in that moment. So yeah.
And the thing is, I would argue, my main argument was that the moment was more for Robin than Sanji, because Robin had been desperately needing a moment like that for herself, and hopefully Oda really cashes in on it. Hopefully we see Robin again. Hopefully it's not off screen.
Oh, we will.
You know, so fingers crossed for that.
But
it's definitely an interesting insight into that Black Maria moment, and it is nice to see, because at the end of the day, there may be, you know, I think again, I keep mentioning Grand Line Review and his video I Hate Sanji, because I think it's the best way to summarize Sanji, where there is 3 parts of Sanji that Oda likes to use intricately, and the only issue is the frustration comes from the fact that Oda seemed to rely more on the human side and the humor side of Sanji a lot post time skip, and we got a shortage of the James Bond Sanji that a lot of people like me as a kid. I mean I started watching One Piece very early, so secret agents, suit, cigarette, kicking, like to me I was like, wow, Sanji's great. So then when that gets reduced, you get a little frustrated because you're waiting to see that portion of Sanji that you like, but if you're only seeing those 2 parts,
I didn't see that part either, honestly, though. Because for me, again, I was not a big fan in general of the arcs in general, like as they were executed. Like I get their setup and they've got like, in retrospect, for example, Fishman Island is probably one of the most like the messages it has and like the implications it has for the story is probably one of the most important ones. But then the execution, I was no fan of Fishman Island and of Punk Hazard, as in it happened. It's probably 2 of my least favorite arcs in the way they were carried out, even though they were important.
Okay.
But for me, it was like in those two arcs, like in general, the Straw Hats, Fishman Island, and Punk Hazard, it was like kind of to be like, oh, like even though these would have been like these 2 islands would have been crazy for them before and like undoable before the time skip, like now they're just like mowing through that like effortlessly.
Right.
So there's like no tension there. We only start getting tension at Dressrosa. And then on Dressrosa already, Sanji is like acting pretty James Bond-like-ish to me. Like he's like, okay, I'm taking like. He's like jumping in there against Doflamingo and then like taking the crew and like saying, okay, I'm gonna leave this to you, we're gonna go ahead without you guys.
I would say,
and then like
that's where I would agree with you on
I mean,
that.
that's when they start, like, Doflamingo is like the first character literally that like is like a problem for the crew, like genuinely. And then like that's when Sanji is like, okay, well, I'm gonna leave this to you. I'm gonna, like, he's jumping in, like facing off against him, not bothering, and then saying, okay, I'm gonna leave this guy to you. I'm gonna leave, like, you guys said you got this. I'm gonna take the rest of the crew to Zou, whatever. And then in Whole Cake Island, we get like this really deep character moment for him. When that's like full James Bond. That's like what was it?
Skyfall.
Yes, thank you. Skyfall-ish, kind of, if you want to take it that way, like going back to the roots and stuff like that, and like exploring like his more emotional and like weaker side, and then actually like making him emerge stronger from that. So I don't know. I would kind of disagree with saying that he has been like overused as a comedic element, because I feel like all of the Straw Hats have been very comedy heavy in these 2 arcs after the time skip.
I see what you're saying. I would say mainly because it's not just the comedy, right? So we got basically the human side of Sanji. We got everything of Sanji in Whole Cake.
Yeah.
Everything about Whole Cake. We didn't really get much comedy scenes from Sanji in general in Whole Cake, to be honest. We got a lot more of his character, a serious side. So Oda kind of just threw human Sanji at us. And then if you look at Fisherman Island, like you mentioned, you look at Punk Hazard, where the Straw Hats were kind of in the background. Oda mainly used Sanji in a humor-filled perspective, except for him shaving Tashigi, and that's about it. And then the Virgo thing, right? Then you go on to Dressrosa, you have a lot of Viola and Sanji, a lot of it. Yeah. And I mean, I'm a Viola stan, so I'm happy my man Sanji got his. But then we move on to the Doflamingo scene, and everyone's like, oh, Sanji hasn't got a serious fight, or all that other stuff. You know how people are. So it seems as though from what you're seeing an overwhelming amount of the gags and the humor, because whenever Sanji's on the screen, Oda is throwing a gag immediately. Like, it's very rare that you got a serious Sanji in post time skip until you got to Whole Cake. Other than that, Sanji was a gag for a large majority of post time skip. And then once you get the Whole Cake, you see not the James Bond side, but you see the human side. So you're like, oh, that was good. Whole Cake was polarizing. It was
very, very humbling also for him.
It was very humbling. And
that's why you didn't get any comedy out of it, right?
And I didn't need it. And to me, like, a lot of people think, it's weird. There's a notion about Whole Cake where people think Whole Cake was bad for Sanji. I understand where they're coming from. But for me,
I don't honestly.
Like, there's people that have their reasons. I don't agree fully. But I think Whole Cake was awesome because I learned about who Sanji was, and it actually made me love him more than I did before.
Exactly.
But,
and I mean, doesn't his comedy sorry, I'm just gonna interrupt you like very shortly here. Like, just to finish that thought, I also feel like that his comedy now in Wano, now that it's back, it feels different. It feels like humble, if that makes sense. Like, because we know he has like this newly found appreciation for his crew and for his captain, and has had this character. Like, for me at least, when I see him joking around, it doesn't feel like he's like being more vulnerable now. I feel like with his like who he is and like his emotions and as a person. So I feel like, especially with the characters around that were in Whole Cake Island, it feels a bit different, which is, to me at least, which is cool.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. Sorry.
No, it makes sense. And I mean, again, I would say I'm probably one of the more jaded Sanji fans, where the humor, I feel like, this is my perception, I feel like Oda had drained my joy for the humor of Sanji out with the way he's overused it, and I believe he abused. I think Fishman Island is the most egregious case. Well, while it had its meaning, it really bothered a lot of people the way Oda used the blood. Like
I generally agree with that.
Yeah, you cannot. I feel like people cannot underestimate what that did to people's perception of Sanji, because it was poor. Now again, like I said, it served its purpose, but people did not like it. So I think based on what he did in Fishman Island, people started to have a bit of resentment towards it, because they're like, okay, well, you gave us all of this foolishness, so when are we gonna get the redemption of what you did with Sanji? And then we had to wait all the way to, we had isolated moments here, the baking of the cake, I think that was great. That was more of Sanji's human side. So everyone's like, all right, well, the way to redeem is if we get some Mr. Prince, maybe I'll forget, and you don't get Mr. Prince until now. So it's like,
but I feel like I think Whole Cake Island was also about getting rid of the toxic side of Mr. Prince and leaving behind the good side. Okay. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think and I think when you say some people were dissatisfied with Whole Cake Island, I think it comes down to, as you say, waiting for redemption, in the sense that redemption for Sanji looks as like he has been made fun of and used as like, you know, basically shown to be pathetic in some instances.
Yeah.
And you were like, I want him like now smashing someone's face in. Basically, I want him, as he does now, like helicoptering Queen around,
looking cool.
You know, that's like,
yeah, and it's not just the power, it's the character,
yeah.
it's the confidence,
Yeah.
the suave, right?
But that's not what Whole Cake was about.
Of course.
And I think that people like to overlook that. It's not like it was about, you know, Sanji making peace with his past. It was about like him becoming more humble and like actually, you know, like finding new appreciation. Like not as we said, he would already have died for every one of his crew, but like finding new appreciation also for the time they spent together and for their power and their struggles as well, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, rekindling his belief in Luffy, that he would have died for Luffy, but clearly he was not at the point where he was like, for Luffy anything is possible. Like that speech he gave to Chopper recently, that's, as you said, a product of Whole Cake Island, right? That unwavering belief that like some of the other Straw Hats already had. And so it was never, for me, it was never going to be like, the point of Whole Cake Island was never going to be, oh, now Sanji smashed Katakuri into the ground, so like that's his character development. Like no, like his character development is being with the crew, saving his captain, and making sure they get the fuck alive out there together.
I agree with that.
Like that was the point, right?
Yeah. Now the thing that I would mention is, a lot of people that when we say we want Mr. Prince, a lot of people think we want Zoro. No,
yeah, exactly.
We don't want Zoro. I want everyone to understand right now, when we say we want Mr. Prince, Mr. Prince is not Zoro either. Mr. Prince
Zoro's
is what you just mentioned. Him being with his crew, him saving his crew in a very opportune time, but in the coolest, suave, badass way you can ever think of. Which is why I think Sanji's the coolest One Piece character, to me.
Exactly. But then like for me, but then I'm so surprised that you were so, because like for me, isn't that part of that cool charm? Isn't that part of the charm that you let the girl save you instead of being the toxic masculine guy who was like, I don't know, man. For me, that's cool. I like for me that was I was like, that's a damn good moment for me. I don't know.
That seems, it's interesting because that seems like is it philosophy? It feels like a philosophical debate now, because that's definitely
ideological.
That is ideological. There it is. It's based on your ideals, right?
I guess so.
It's interesting. That's a very interesting point. You know,
it's as you said, it's like personal ideology at this point. But for me, I think being like we know that Sanji is like, you know, he is the third strongest in the crew, or like, I don't want to get into it, but you know, he's super strong, right? So we know like if he wanted to, he could beat Black Maria's ass pretty easily, probably.
So absolutely.
So on that point, it's like being able to actually like he's able. I'm just repeating myself, but like being able to protect his ideal. You have the comedic element in there, but then actually, you know, being like, hey, it's not like me saving Robin Chuan. It's like I'm asking Robin to save me because she's a pretty big badass herself, and like I don't have to deal with this shit. I don't know. For me, that was pretty like that was maturity for me. That was like I'm not like this. It's like, you know, like how it's like, yeah, I want to be James Bond and I want to be cool and the cool guy always saves the girl. It's like, no, like I can also like let the girl save me if it needs to be.
Right.
I thought that like for me that was like a sense of like maturity, but like as you said, that might also depend a bit on like what you personally value in like chivalry and in your Mr. Prince, I guess. I
value the chivalry. I do. I really do. I think, man, this is tough. We're gonna go on forever. So I'll leave it at this. I value the chivalry of Sanji, and I appreciate it because I myself am old school. My father raised me the same way. So to me, people don't like it. You know, people think that Sanji's chivalry is demeaning and undermining to women. And I see where they're coming from. And Sanji's reactions and actions do mimic some, you know, behavior that women are just damsels in distress. But from my own upbringing, from an African household, for everyone who is from an African household, the way Sanji wants to make sure that a woman is always protected and taken care of, that is something that people like me can resonate with. And I don't have an issue.
But again, I'm like not disagreeing with you in any way. I think what Oda has done with Whole Cake Island is protected that ideal of Sanji, where he's like, I still want to be the guy who saves and protects his crew.
Right, and no Robin
But
can
he
actually
has-
take care of it as well.
But he has kind of like sucked out a bit like the toxic masculinity part of it, where he's like, under no circumstances can I ever push it on, or can I either let myself be saved by the girl. It's like kind of like, because I'm like, he took away that like I'm a guy, so like I can't let the girl do the work.
Yeah.
He sucked that away, but he left the I want to be the shining knight part, and like I want to save and protect my crew. But he was like, okay, but I'm also like mature enough now to recognize that, like, as you say, it's not just damsels in distress. Like, I still want to defend and protect and fight for my women, but like at the same time I recognize that my women are pretty strong themselves, kind of. So I don't know, for me, like, that was a pretty like I don't think there's like any I think as I said, I think he left these great parts of Mr. Prince that you value so much. He completely left those intact, but like sucked a bit out the like egocentric, narcissistic, like I want to be the cool guy kind of vibe, which in my opinion made him cooler. But then again, that might again depend on perspective.
Believe it or not, as humans, we do like, we say we don't want to be narcissistic, but we always gravitate towards the narcissistic alpha male type of guys. Yo everybody, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe here to get the latest from the channel, or also check out some other videos that might suit your specific tastes.